There have been new charges raised about who took part in the assassination of President John Kennedy. Jeff Kamen is here with details. Jeff?
Fidel Castro's former mistress and CIA operative Marita Lorenz today made new charges against her one-time commander, Frank Sturgis, the man who admits to ordering her to murder Castro. Mr. Sturgis is in the Action News studio to answer the charges made during a videotaped interview with Miss Lorenz. Contrary to what Sturgis told us last week, Miss Lorenz says she and her commander both worked with Lee Harvey Oswald. She said she first met Oswald following a mission she did for Sturgis.
General Marcos Pérez Jiménez, who was my third assignment, in 1963, August, in a safe house in Miami.
Where?
In a safe house, a company house.
CIA?
Yes. There,
who was with you?
I saw him first, Frank.
Frank Sturgis, who swears to me that he never met Lee Harvey
Well, he has
Oswald.
a very short memory.
Let's put that right now to Frank Sturgis. You just heard Marita Lorenz. What do you say?
She's lying. I have never met Lee Harvey Oswald. I have never left Miami, Florida in an automobile with her, nor anyone else traveling to Dallas, Texas.
Were you ever in a safe house in Miami, Florida with Marita Lorenz?
I don't think Marita Lorenz knows what a safe house is.
Now let's go on to our next charge. Miss Lorenz says Jack Ruby, the man who killed Oswald, met with Frank Sturgis in a Dallas hotel room days before the assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
Ruby, white socks, dark suit, came to the door, and Frank talked to him outside. We were no newspapers, no phone calls. The secrecy of it was abnormal. You know, for me, I was getting suspicious, so they sent me back to Miami.
Sent me back.
Because usually, when we did an operation like this, was a decoy. You understand? A decoy. When they would go into installations where there were military equipment, I was outside the fence.
You diverted the attention of the soldiers on duty.
Yes, so they got together and I was sent back to
Was that the first
Miami.
time that you met Jack Ruby?
That was the first time I saw him, yes. He was very outstanding because of the hostility to me. I was a girl in a group that was involved in something I didn't know about.
And he said what when he saw you in the hotel room?
He just said, pointed to me, who's she? And I resented his action.
Who seemed to be in command?
I possibly have met him, I'm pretty sure, in the Havana Riviera in 1959.
What about you and Jack Ruby and Marita Lorenz?
That's a lie.
Everything she just said is a lie.
That's correct.
Did you know Jack Ruby?
No.
Never met him?
Never met him.
No knowledge of him?
No knowledge.
Never heard of him?
Yes, I've heard of him.
I mean, before the assassination of John F. Kennedy?
Never heard of him before.
Never saw him in a casino which you were in charge of the security for in Cuba? None of that ever happened?
Well, let me go ahead and say this. When I was in Cuba, I was director of security, which is an intelligence organization for the Castro forces. Sometime later, Castro did make me put me in charge of the gambling casinos for the Cuban government. Now, I met a lot of people during my tour of duty checking the casinos.
But you had no specific knowledge of Jack Ruby as Jack Ruby?
That's correct. No specific knowledge.
Well, let's go on now. Marita Lorenz told me Frank Sturgis walked with her on a fashionable East Side street and admitted to her that he had fired a shot at President Kennedy in Dallas.
He said to me that, you know, he was there, but who was going to prove it? I said, Frank, you did you? And he said, who's going to prove it?
You feel that he admitted to you that he had participated in the assassination of the president?
Yes. He told me on York Avenue, because he said, I'm not going to talk to you like that in the house, because there are bugs.
Electronic eavesdropping?
Yes.
When was this?
This was the beginning of this year, last year. He's made several trips to New York.
Do you recall any such conversations with Marita Lorenz?
She's living in a dream world. Absolute dream world.
Did you visit her in the city of New York on or about the 1st of this year?
I visit her several times. Every time I visit her, it was always trying to help this girl for the problems and troubles that she has had here in the New York City area.
In her operations as an agent?
No.
No?
No, not in the last year and a half to 2 years. In the last year and a half to 2 years, as a matter of fact, I came to New York in order to help her with certain attempts on her life, according to her. I taped conversations between myself and Marita in a hotel room, which went over a period of time of problems that she did have, and this concerning certain documents, communist documents that she obtained, that she turned over to me. I immediately called Senator Baker's Intelligence Committee. I spoke with Mr. Howard Levingood. I put Marita Lorenz on the telephone in order for her to know him personally, and tried to arrange for Mr. Levingood and another agent, or not an agent, but Mr. Levingood and another person to come from Washington to meet with her so she could discuss her problems that she has had during this period of either 18 months or a 2-year period.
When was the last time you saw Marita Lorenz before the move? Physically?
Several months.
Several months ago.
Yes.
Okay, let's go on now. Ms. Lorenz says Mr. Sturgis was in New York visiting her as recently as this past June and attempting to recruit her for secret missions. I asked her to be specific.
If relations were going to be established with Cuba again and Fidel Castro came to the city or to the UN, he had plans to use me, or he wanted to use me to set him up.
Set up Castro?
Yes.
To assassinate Castro?
Yes.
Did he go into detail?
Slightly, yes.
What kind
But
of...
he could get me through close to Fidel, and he had contacts in Union City, New Jersey, and, you know.
In the Cuban community?
In the in the Cuban colony.
Was that to be an assassination paid for by the United States government? Or
Well, I was told he was still on the payroll.
of the CIA?
Yes. And I said, you know, I didn't then on the second mission, and I won't now
Kill Castro?
kill Fidel.
Now, Mr. Sturgis, what about that?
Jeff, on that story,
Let's listen to Henry Rothblatt. Henry Rothblatt is attorney to Frank Sturgis. Mr.
On
Rothblatt.
that story, any qualified psychiatrist would commit her as a paranoid schizophrenic or a pathological liar. I mean, you don't have to be a professional to come to that conclusion. The entire absurdity of this story and every story that was told about Frank Sturgis.
Mr. Sturgis, let's hear it in your words. You heard what she just said about you allegedly recruiting her to kill Castro should he come to New York. Any truth to that at all?
It's a lie. I want to say something, Jeff. This girl is trying to discredit Central Intelligence Agency. She's trying to discredit the false claims of people that she has never met in her life, like the ex-commander-in-chief Pedro Diaz-Lanz. She never met E. Howard Hunt, which she has claimed she met Howard Hunt and Pedro Diaz-Lanz. They never met her. All these are lies. I will again state this, and I've stated this, and my lawyer can verify that in front of the Senate Watergate Committee, the grand jury, that any accusations pertaining to me, pertaining to the assassination of President Kennedy, I will take a lie detector test, and I will take sodium pentothal.
Well, you took one recently. What were the results?
You'll read about it in the Midnight Globe newspaper, which I have spoken with Mr. Mel Abrams.
You sold them the rights to your lie detector test?
It's just part of the news report. Let me say this. One of the most qualified polygraph examiners polygraphed Frank Sturgis, an author in the field of polygraph. I examined the results, I examined the tapes, and I can say that I'm thoroughly satisfied.
Mr. Rothblatt, you promised me that you would release the results of those tests, those polygraph tests, the moment they were done, and now I hear from Mr. Sturgis that apparently you sold the rights to a magazine.
No, we wanted to give the courtesy to the House Assassination Committee. The reports are being sent to the House Assassination Committee, and I can say that we are completely satisfied with the results of that polygraph exam.
Let's go on to the final charge that Marita Lorenz made during the interview. She, the former mistress to Fidel Castro, says that she and Frank Sturgis were once on a gun-running trip in a small boat, and Sturgis murdered 2 Cuban boys who were accompanying them.
They were ill, they were seasick, and they were pushed.
Frank Sturgis pushed them?
Overboard. And this, I never forgot. I still hear it, and my conscience bothers me. Against him alone in that boat with a boatload of guns after they were gone. I continued to navigate to the point where the drop would be made.
But Sturgis definitely pushed those two boys into the sea. You saw that?
Yes.
If he were here right now, what would you say to him about that behavior?
Why? Why? I would ask him a lot.
Well, now, Mr. Sturgis, you just heard yourself being accused of murdering by hand and throwing into a raging sea two Cuban boys who Marita Lorenz says was helping you and her on a gun-running mission. Any fact to that at all?
One, it's a lie. Number two, what are the names of the two Cuban boys? Because evidently they got to have families here. Number three, she is trying to discredit all American agencies, because I heard her tell this to a newspaper reporter, that she hates the FBI, she hates the United States government. This girl has completely turned over to the other side. She's out to discredit the Cuban colony, the Cuban exiles, and anyone, especially myself, who have for many, many years, with or without permission of the United States government, to fight against communist Cuba. This is what she is doing.
Mr. Sturgis, what you would have me and everyone watching you believe is that Marita Lorenz, who you thought enough of as an operative to use in a very sensitive area, is now nothing but a madwoman, totally unreliable.
That's what you said. I say she's totally unreliable now up until this release of these ridiculous statements, which she can't back up.
Jeff,
I think Steve Bosch has a question for you.
I'd like to ask Mr. Rothblatt a question. Is there not something that you can do legally to...
Well, obviously we could sue her, but what can we recover from a person who is receiving welfare assistance from the city of New York?
But he has to pay these enormous legal fees because of charges she continues to make.
Unfortunately, under the First Amendment of our Constitution, free speech still prevails. We can't enjoin people from even making libelous and defamatory accusations.
Mr. Rothblatt, isn't it true that one of your most famous clients, Martha Mitchell, was widely branded as a madwoman or a publicity seeker or both early on? And it was only really just up to her death and after her death that most of her allegations against the Nixon administration were proved true.
There were many people who thought she was a brilliant woman and a very sincere woman. She was controversial. There were differences of opinion about Martha. I thought Martha was a great woman and a genius in her own way.
What you're saying is there's no rightful comparison to be drawn between Marita Lorenz and Martha Mitchell.
It would be insulting to make any comparison.
Mr. Rothblatt, Mr. Sturgis, thank you for your time.
Thank you.